Good morning, honors geometry students. This is the video for Chapter 5, Section 4, Chapter 5, Section 5, and Sum of 6. So what's happening in these sections is using the properties of quadrilaterals. Now, third period and eighth period both have the properties of the 7 quadrilaterals PDF. Okay? Now that one's sideways. I got to look at this one here. This one, so this PDF is for you to really try to understand as best you can. So there are 7 quadrilaterals here. Okay? This is a parallelogram, rectangle, trapezoid, isosceles, trapezoid, and kite. And then you can see here that they're sort of in 3 different categories. It's a kite, trapezoid, parallelogram. Now, parallelogram contains the rectangle, rhombus, and square because they're all rectangle, rhombuses, and squares all have properties of parallelogram, plus these other ones. Okay? So you can also see this on your assignment, which is the Google Slide assignment. Okay? Now the Google Slide assignment is this assignment here, okay, that you should have already, and there's a video to explain what it is you need to do. Now the properties of the quadrilaterals are on this slide. There is an example here of what I want done, and then you have to put your construction in the rest of the slides. Now that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. What I am going to be talking about is how to use them. So what is it that we need to be able to get done with this? Well, okay, so this is 5-4 and part of 5-5 and maybe even 5-6. Okay? So 5-4 starts out all right, 5-4 starts out with the quadrilaterals. What is a quadrilateral? Quadrilateral. Now, a quadrilateral is a 4-sided polygon. Now, poly means many, and gon means sides. So, polygon has many sides, but a quadrilateral has 4-sided. Now, polygons are divided into 2 types. One is convex, okay, which we study. And the other one is concave. We don't really talk too much about concave, but a convex polygon is something like this, where you have out, all the angles sort of point out. All right, all the angles point out. Okay? A concave polygon is when one of the angles, okay, caves in, like this one. So concave is like, makes a cave here. We don't generally study, so we don't generally study concave. Okay, this is not something that we generally study. Okay, so concave polygons they're interesting and there's something to them, but the geometry we study is mainly convex. Okay, now there are several parts of a quadrilateral. Okay, parts of quadrilateral. And what we'll do is we'll take, after we look at the parts of the quadrilateral, we will then talk about the first quadrilateral, which is a parallelogram. So anyway, we'll take a look at the quadrilateral here. And we have angle 1, angle 2, so we have 4 angles. Oops. I guess I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. So there's 4 angles, all right, 4 sides. There's 2 diagonals. And the 2 diagonals they connect the 4 angles like that, okay? Now, there's something called consecutive angles. Consecutive means in a row. So consecutive angles are 1 and 2, all right, next to each other. 1 and 3, they're next to each other. 2 and 4 are consecutive angles. And 3 and 4 are consecutive angles. Okay, so there's consecutive angles. And then there's opposite angles. All right, which would be 1 and 4, 2 and 3. Okay, so the quadrilaterals have all these things. They have 4 angles, 4 sides, they have 2 diagonals, they have consecutive angles, boom, 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 and opposite angles, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so those are the basics of your quadrilateral. Now, when I'm talking more and more about the polygons, there'll be more diagonals, and more sides and things like that. So anyway, and then the sum of the angles, is 360. So it doesn't matter what they are, but angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 plus angle 4 will always equal 360 degrees. The very first quadrilateral we study is the parallelogram. Now, you can see from this particular property sheet, okay, that a parallelogram, which looks like that, has these 5 properties that are really important, okay? So I think I'll just take a snippet of that and show you what I'm talking about, okay? So now, these are the 5 properties of a parallelogram. So we'll get those 5 properties down, and we'll make it look like a parallelogram, and we'll draw the diagonals. Now, I'm going to label this parallelogram A, B, C, D, and I'll put an E right here, okay? So both pairs of opposite sides parallel. So what that means is that AD parallel to BC, okay, and AB and DC are parallel. So AB parallel to DC. So both pairs of opposite sides parallel. That means these 2 sides are parallel and these 2 sides are parallel. Okay? Now, there's a lot going on there, right? So we can consider this being a transversal. We can consider this being a transversal. So there's some things going on there already. Okay? Now, both pairs of opposite sides congruent. Both pairs of opposite sides congruent. So that means here that this side is congruent to this side, and DC is congruent to AB. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. All right, then we also have both pairs of opposite angles congruent. All right, so that means this angle is congruent to this angle, and this angle here is congruent to this angle here. So both pairs of opposite sides, or both pairs of opposite angles congruent. Okay? All right, and then the consecutive angle supplementary. So that means this angle and this angle are supplementary. This angle and this angle are supplementary. This angle and this angle are supplementary. So there's a lot going on there too. Oh boy, are you overwhelmed yet? The diagonals bisect each other. So that means this segment is congruent to this segment, and this segment is congruent to this segment. So the diagonals bisect each other. Now there is a lot going on there, so we have to kind of unwrap that and keep in mind that. So how do we show that? Well, there's a lot of ways to show it, so we have to be mindful of that. There's a few ways to go about doing things with the parallelograms, okay? So we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be careful of how we show that these properties are true. So, and how we use it, right? So how are we going to use it? Now, one of the things that's really tough about this is the parallel lines. So the parallel lines in the parallelogram happen because it's one of the properties. So if it's something is a parallelogram, then this is true. Now, why then is this angle congruent to this angle? Okay, and then why is this angle here congruent to this angle here? Well, those are alternate interior angles. Now, these two angles are congruent because this is parallel to this, all right? And you can see your transversal here, okay? Now, we're going to be careful here because we're going to say that this angle is congruent to this angle because these two are parallel, okay? And this is the same transversal. Now, the same is true for the other side, right? So this angle, the same is true for the other side, which gets a little confusing, but this and this are alternate interior angles, yeah? And then this and this are alternate interior angles. Okay, so the parallelogram is quite a lot. There's quite a lot going on there, okay? So we have to remember that. Now, the quadrilaterals, the 7 special quadrilaterals, have some things in common. And just looking at this sheet right here gives us an idea of how they're connected, okay? And also, this sheet here gives us an idea of how they're connected too. Okay, so there are kites, there are parallelograms, there are trapezoids, isosceles trapezoids, rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. Okay, so there's a lot going on here that we really have to keep in mind when we're doing this. Okay, so what are some of the problems that you're going to see regarding this? Well, you're going to have to identify some things like the bases, identify some things like the diagonals, and really take a look at a lot of these figures. Now, I do go through a video on how to do the constructions on these, which is a big assignment that we're going to focus on this week. Okay? So like I said, there are quadrilaterals here, 4-sided polygons. The parts of a quadrilateral are there's 4 angles and 4 sides and 2 diagonals. Now, we have consecutive angles, which are next to each other, and we have opposite angles. All right? And the sum of the angles is always 360. It's like a triangle, only it's 2 triangles. And then we looked at all these properties of a parallelogram, and there's a lot going on there. Okay? So this is a little bit of introduction to that.